Hello and welcome to the Vinny Brusco Show podcast, episode number 422. This week's episode, I am joined by Giovanni Bartolomeo. Giovanni is someone who brings passion and experience to teaching and creating a deep connection amongst people. He is an entrepreneur. He is a breathwork facilitator. He is the host of the Elemental Awakening podcast. He is the creator of the Elemental Rhythm Breathing, which is coming out soon. He is also the creator of Elemental Awakening, the Elemental Group, the Elemental Wellness Center, which is a facility that basically homes breathwork and sensory deprivation and ice baths and sound healing. And it is a mecca for all different types of modalities. And Giovanni and I got into a heap of conversation centered around some of those modalities, also just consciousness, the awareness around consciousness, the veil that we experience in this 3D reality, and what potentially is behind that. And we got into a whole bunch more. So I hope you enjoy episode number 422 with Giovanni Bartolomeo. Enjoy.
Hey everyone, Giovanni Bartolomeo here, and this is the Vinny Brusco Show.
And here we go.
I've been practicing your last name for like 45 minutes.
Let's see where you got.
I have to look at it. Hold on. I have to look at it, and then it's like I need to like phonetically pronunciate. Hold on. I have it here. Hold on. Just bring it up. Here we go. Let's see. Bartolomeo.
Perfect. Nailed it. There you go. All that
Done.
practice pays off. Say, who says practice doesn't pay off?
That's right. How do you get to Carnegie? How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. How Toronto is it's very chaotic right now in the sense that no one knows what's going on. But, the more this year progresses, the more I realize that, this is all just a dream. This is all just an experience, life. And, you get too caught up into the nitty gritty, you get sucked in and your mind just is like, what the fuck? And it's like, hey, I'm here for the show. I'm here for this like interesting time on this planet and to show up however I feel I'm supposed to, what I'm supposed to learn, how I'm supposed to show up for the things that are important to me. And the more I go into that mindset, none of it really matters. It's like, okay, like what's going to happen next? I think about if you were like, in this utopia where everything was perfect and you're there for an infinite amount of time, eventually you're going to see that dark forest and be like, you know what, I'm ready to see what's beyond there, or something that's challenging or something that's different. So I'm not saying I want to stay in this vibration forever. I'm saying, okay, we're going to move through it collectively. This is some of the planet's going through. I think everything has a reason. So, instead of trying to like fight it or grasp or, want it to end, it's like, okay, we're just going to flow with it and see what happens. So I'm good. I'm good.
All that being said, I'm good. Yeah, I'm with you on the vibrational frequency headiness of that thought process, and I'm with you in regards to, I've been really thinking about this idea recently of, like you kind of touched on it, like this is all just an experience, and diving into the idea of the binary code that's behind all of this sound waves and particles coming together to create imagery and what we're actually experiencing. And when you step into that space, and it's to your point, when you step into the micro of the macro, you can get caught up in everything that's in both worlds, right? You can get caught up in that, and you could also get caught up with what's surrounding you. And if you don't find that balance between both worlds and both experiences, it becomes a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then I just keep reminding myself, like, or asking myself the question is like, like, what is the point of all this? Like, well, what is the purpose? We don't even know why we're here, how we got here, like, so it's a very, very interesting time for sure. And I have a lot of different theories and different, like I've been reading a lot, obviously, on the internet since this whole thing started. And there's these crazy conspiracy theories that help you to sort of gain your own perspective on different things versus, there's the narratives that you hear and people you talk to. And I try to be as open-minded to everything, because if anything is possible, even a little bit, then it could be what's the truth, as long as it's possible, it could happen. So, who knows
Yes.
who's right, who's wrong.
Well, that's the thing, right? We're culturally, for some reason, in this space where people need to be right or wrong, and we don't question, and if you do question one narrative or the other, um, you get grouped in, right? And to me, if it's at least worth thinking about and questioning and leaning into
Mhm.
the curiosity of what's actually going on, whether you want to go into conspiracy theories or why are we here, the whole gamut of it is worth at least questioning and thinking. And there's a lot of fear that comes up, and a lot of, like you had mentioned, like there's a lot of dark little corners of your mind that you can go into, and it's hard to recognize that, but it's also important to step into that space, because that's where a lot of the truth lies. That's where a lot of the growth becomes.
Yeah, and I guess I started losing myself a bit towards the end of last year, where I was really maybe going to some fear-based or stress-based, all this uncertainty. And then I just decided, January, I'm just going to double down on my own personal practice. I said that's one thing I can control is myself and the time and investment I put into myself. And I just started, meditating an hour every day. I was off and on meditation. I could do a lot of health and wellness stuff. Once I really dropped into the meditation, it just really allowed me to detach from that aspect of the mind that's, in that fear state, and just allow me to sort of just look at it from a different perspective. And it's like, okay, like I don't care about all these narratives as much. Whereas, we're gonna flow through. I'm gonna observe what's going on and just be one with it. And that's really changed the way I feel overall. Listen, there's still days where it's like, what's next? Like when is this gonna end? But I remind myself, okay, like we're having fun here. Like this is challenging, it's crazy, it's scary, but no one wants to watch a movie that's just boring and playing the same thing every day. We came in here, I think, as a soul, we decided like, hey, like I want to go try out this experience. And you're here, and now you're like, oh, I want to get the fuck out of here. I don't know if I can swear on this show, but it's like,
Good.
no, you gotta move through it, and from all my experiences in life, whether it's psychedelic experiences or just life experiences, once you persevere through the dark times, the challenges, there's always a light on the other side. There's always a transformation. There's always a level of growth or new understanding that comes out of it once you move through it. And when you're not ready to move through it and you try to cling to it or resist it or not want to learn from it, that pattern keeps coming up in your life in different forms. So maybe this is just one collective sort of pattern humanity is trying to evolve from. Who knows?
How did you get into this space and this kind of thinking and this mindset? Because obviously you have your facility, which is sensory deprivation, and it's sound healing, and it's meditation, and it's breath work. And I've taken part in those individually, not under one roof. So I imagine there's an energy in the actual building that I want to get into. But how did you first come into this space of kind of this mindful approach to life and kind of that eye opening?
Yeah, it was a gradual process of just being lost, and like I was always curious to find answers and to learn. Um, not by anyone's fault, but my parents were doing their best and trying to teach me how to sort of be successful and how to sort of do well for myself and start a family and do all these things. I was born Catholic also, but I just felt like I really had no real connection or lineage to something that was greater than myself. I had a hard time relating to the Catholic faith, in a sense. Like I love the stories of Jesus and what he stood for, but I felt like I had real no connection to spirituality. And as I was doing well in business and being successful to a certain degree, and I'm not talking about any mega success, but what I consider success, I started feeling more and more empty. I was like, I thought I was getting closer towards what I was supposed to be doing here, and I wasn't. And I always share this, but I had this moment where I think I was just sitting in bed, or I may have been sleeping, having a dream. It was in the afternoon. And I remember looking at my hands, and for a moment, I looked at my hands, and they looked like these old, wrinkly hands. And I sort of, did a double take, and I came back, and the thought that popped into my head was, just keep doing what you're doing. You're going to die the same way you're living right now. You're going to go through the next 60, 80 years, and you're going to die. And if that's what you want, that's fine. There's no problem with that. But pretty much you're going to waste the rest of your life doing nothing meaningful. And I was like, fuck, I don't do anything meaningful. Like what's my purpose? Why am I on this earth? So I started asking myself those kind of questions. And that led to this sort of curiosity to find out more. And the initial sort of obvious, well, lucky where we live, we have this thing called Google that we start, searching, Googling and finding things, and led me to some interesting YouTube channels and talks like from Alan Watts, which is more like a Buddhist type philosophy, which was very different from like the monotheistic Catholic sort of mindset where like you're here, God's here, there's this priest somewhere in between. And it was more of this different type of philosophy that I really sort of connected with in a way. And interestingly enough, somewhere in the comments for one of those videos, someone starts talking about Terrence McKenna, and ayahuasca, and these things I'd never heard of. And then there was this moment of like, I get this sometimes where things will pop up and just it's like there's like an alarm going off. It's like red flashing lights. It's like, hey, there's something here for you. Like, pay attention. And it's happened many times, but this one was like the first one that I can really remember that was like, hey, like there's something here for you. And then I just started watching more and more videos, and I could just feel this sort of sense of, okay, I need to understand what this means, what this experience is like, because I was searching, I was meditating a little bit. I wasn't really having any type of transcendental experiences that were, overly out of the ordinary. But this seemed like a shortcut. It seemed like something that was like connect you with a different type of experience. So somehow I convinced my wife and found a place in Brazil that was doing ayahuasca, and I went down, and that sort of really shifted things for me in a big way at that point.
Now that's your
Didn't give me
first. That's your first. That's your first experience with any psychedelic or anything of that nature.
in high school we'd go to parties and drink beer and mushrooms, but never in like an intentional sense where I'm going to eat this substance, close my eyes in darkness and go into introspective state or just focus on what comes up. It was always like outward experience, distraction,
Sure,
laughing,
sure.
yeah. So I went into that, and I had a death experience, like just all these crazy deep experiences that crying. My grandfather died when I was a little, like very very young, like a baby, and I had no recollection, but got to experience like all these life memories with him. It was just these really super interesting experiences that were all kind of unexplainable to me at the time, but it felt like the underlying sort of message was there's so much more than you can see that is just beyond your perception. But don't worry, when it's time to see it, you'll see it, you'll understand it. But you're exactly where you need to be right now. But you guys as humans think you're smart. Really, you know nothing about the universe. You don't even know anything about the planets beyond your own solar system. And so that was kind of scary, but also comforting at the same time. Where it's like, okay, like I don't need to figure all the answers. I just need to continue down this journey and follow my heart. And that was, early 2013. There was no one I could really talk to about this stuff back home because, now a lot of people are talking about plant medicine, psychedelics. Back then, it was like no one. And I ended up sharing these stories with people, and I felt like I was trying to convince them about it. I was really excited. And then I just decided I'm going to make a documentary. So I made a documentary called Psyched Out, released it on the internet for free, got picked up by Gaia and Amazon and a couple other of these streaming services, Food Matters TV. And that was that. And I was sharing this thing that I really wanted to share. And, I realized that also psychedelics by themselves are not the answer to anything. The answers all lie within you. It's how you use these life experiences to create changes in your life. How do you integrate them? So whether it's an ayahuasca experience or a near-death experience or a rock bottom experience or a breath work or meditation, whatever it is, when you have these insights, it's like, okay, like how do I apply this to my life and my awareness of reality? And so I started going down that path more and got into breath work. I met Wim Hof. I started doing like cold training, hot training, started sharing breath work experiences with people. And it just started like evolving. And I was just like, okay, let me follow my heart. Let me get out of my head because I'm always trying to figure shit out of my head. Let me just follow my heart, see what feels good. And that sort of just led me down this path of trusting and just going on a feeling and not really trying to get too stuck in my head and trying to control the outcomes of the things that I do in my life. So yeah, that's what sort of led me to create the space. It happened in a blur when I look back at it, like that 3 or 4 months where I just rented this place and it was an empty shell. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna build something here for a community and I'm gonna put everything in that I love and
Yeah.
and try to figure out how to make a business around it. And I tell people too, like being an entrepreneur, that's almost like a religion in itself because you have all these, you get tested as a human being, like how resilient you are, how your ability to sort of make decisions. And, you get faced with some pretty interesting decisions because you're interacting with people, you're interacting with money, you want to do good and you want to do good for yourself and the world. Well, you should want to, not everyone does. And I just saw it was really bringing things up in me where my deepest fears about myself, about failure, about not being good enough, about, what people would think of me if this didn't go well. And brought me to a dark space, where I was in a lot of fear at the time. Is it too soon? Do people even like this kind of stuff that I'm doing? And when I realized my mindset was going into fear, I was attracting those kind of people to the place, and I was attracting that kind of energy into space. And it was just bringing more I was attracting more of what I was thinking about all the time. So my
Sure,
energy
sure.
was just creating this horrible energy around me. And then one day I just snapped out of it. I said, okay, I have to accept that there's a possibility I could lose everything because I signed, a loan with the bank, to put my house up for collateral, and all that fun stuff when you become an entrepreneur. I said, okay, like there's a possibility all this could happen. So what does it really mean if that does? And I just really had to sit with that. And, like my family's not going to think any different of me, like no one really cares, like
That's the key, right? No one really cares. We care
it's,
in our
it's,
own minds and our own relationship with this fear. And no, at the end of the day, no one really cares.
yeah. And so when I really accepted, okay, this is a possibility. And if it is, I accept it and I'll just figure it out at that point, what's next. And I'm going to focus on my initial intention, which was to serve people in the community and to create a space of like healing for people who are on a similar journey as me that want to connect with other like-minded people, and just focus on everyone that comes to the door and just bring that to them, that energy of like, hey, welcome, and they're the most important person in the world. The energy just shifted immediately. Like just different people started coming out. The team is growing of like the right people on the staff. And what ended up happening was, the business itself, I wouldn't say is a super profitable business. It gets by and we pay the bills, we pay all our staff, and there's sometimes a little bit left over. Around COVID start, we were starting to become profitable. But my profit came in relationships and experiences and meeting new people, and also other businesses that sort of came out of this place because I was attracting those people who are into similar things as me, saw the value I brought up new opportunities, and allowed me to make money in other areas of my life. And and if I was trying to segment like strictly from the mind, hey, this is a good business, this is a bad business, I would have chopped it a long time ago and said like, hey, money is better spent elsewhere, maybe try to sell it, this is not doing well. But when I look at it as the profit or the value it brings and the overall sort of all the areas of my life, it's like super profitable in all the other things that it gives to me. And so I try to look at things differently from that. It's like, hey, it's not all about dollars and cents all the time. But I went to business school, which would probably tell you otherwise. It's like, yeah,
Right,
cut
right,
this,
right.
change that. Yeah.
On an Excel spreadsheet, it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't add up. It would be what you said, like a bad business model. But when you could step into the feeling of what it creates around that, right? And you break it down, and from an entrepreneur or business standpoint, most people are like, this is a bad business model, like you said. But there's a feeling and energy behind it that really is what it's rooted in. And when you could pull from that and recognize that this is what I'm going after. I'm going after a feeling. I'm going after, if you want to call it a vibration, whatever you want to call it, I'm going after that. That is what I'm chasing. That's the dragon. That's the high that I'm going after. That awareness, that ultimate feeling. I want to go back a little bit because I grew up in a very Catholic household too, and I think the idea of religion gets so misconstrued because once you step into whether it be a Buddhist tradition or something that's a little bit more flexible with definition, and you don't have to take everything for paper, right? You could take it with interpretation. Religion becomes, Catholicism becomes a little bit more palatable because there is this relationship that we're raised in, that God's here, he has a white beard and you're a bad person, and we start to identify in those. What was that relationship like going into your I would call transition, or you want to call it awakening, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it? What was that relationship like with religion?
Yeah. So
Because I
I
was
never
completely
really,
disenfranchised by it. Like I got to the point where I was like, I don't go to church. Like I don't believe right in these things. I understand. Like I didn't understand what they were trying to tell me or teach me. They were just like, it was just paper.
yeah, I really lost that connection to myself where, I remember staring at the cross in the church, and, you always have this image of this guy that's like bleeding and suffering, being tortured on this cross. And I always look at him and say, just give me a wink. just give me a wink if you're real. You know, just nod your head, give me the thing. I'll be here. I'll devote my life, but just give me something. And every Sunday, and I didn't go to church all the time or
Give me
rarely
a nod.
regularly, but when I was in there, I was just like, just give me something, you know. However, like I think a lot of it had to do with control and men and people taking over the years and just really construing that message. There's a really good book, The Immortality Key by Brian Muraresku, that also says that, a lot of these religions were based in psychedelic sort of foundations, where a lot of the different rituals and, drinking of the wine was infused with different things and across different cultures and different religions. And sort of that was quite interesting to me. I now I believe more that Jesus was some sort of shaman type figure. Whether he used plant medicine or not, there's some arguments about, um, you know, Christianity originating as some sort of mushroom cult, which the John Allegro, the mushroom and the cross. I think that's the title of the book. And so I find these all interesting possibilities. Like the story of Jesus turning water into wine. I remember hearing a theory that, he had a bag of mushrooms and, he infused it into some tea and, gave it to all the people there, and they sort of were in good spirits afterwards. But I just tried to be open-minded because I do believe, some of the stories, they make sense about, the principles behind it. And, I've had some experiences with psychedelics where I've sort of seen Jesus, I guess, and I've had some interesting, I don't know if it's the actual Jesus, but a representation of Jesus in my mind, which were some pretty interesting experiences of the dialogue that sort of took place. Um, so I never totally sort of abandoned it per se. Like the church, I'm more sort of skeptical of, trying to control things and say this is the way it is. But I think everyone should have their ability to have a direct relationship with, God or whatever they want to call it. And, through meditation, you can get there, through psychedelics, you can get there, through many different ways you can get there. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the teachings per se, but sometimes I guess more about like the church. And I think it's losing sort of appeal to the younger demographics. Like, I don't know anyone that goes to church,
Yeah.
anymore.
So much of it is based out of obligation and tradition rather than authentically. I have two small children, and I could tell you that we don't go to church, but I still try to keep them in practice of being a good human being, right? And it's those messages that you get from church, right? That when you start to replace words or you start to integrate different thoughts or feelings or beliefs, then it starts to make even more sense than when it was just, a story that you had to believe for as fact, right? It actually starts to resonate and make sense when you start to interchange these words, and maybe you take out God, you put in source, or you put in whatever you want to put, but they
Right.
start
Yeah.
to make
Whatever you want to put.
sense.
Yeah. And I feel like, I feel like with my parents, it was more like, you need to go to church or else you're not going to be a good person. And I would be like the other way around. Should I just be a good person? Then I can go to church if I want to or not. It's like, oh,
Right.
if you don't go to church, like God this, or and I would say like, Dad, what are the 10 commandments? And he'd be like, oh, like if you name 3 or 4 of them, it's like,
Right.
okay, well,
He's
obviously
naming he's naming
you're,
the Beatitudes. You're like, no, those are the Beatitudes. You're wrong. You're a bad Catholic. You're a horrible person.
and then obviously like, is this weird sort of thing where it's like, yeah, you can be bad all week. If you go to church and it's okay. It's like, okay, well, what's that teaching people? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, just go ask for forgiveness and you're good. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for forgiveness, but if you are doing things knowing that, hey, I can just go and ask for forgiveness at the end of the week and I don't have to change the way I live, I think there's some disconnect there as well. So
Yeah, I want to go back to something
yeah.
you mentioned also in regard to that exploratory curiosity of the meaning of life. And Viktor Frankl in his book, and obviously logotherapy, the idea of man's search for meaning, right? What is this all about? And ultimately, and this is a very macabre, dark way to look at it, ultimately life is pretty meaningless, right? It's what we actually put meaning into that gives us meaning.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did your relationship with meaning and kind of the discovery of your own meaning and purpose kind of unfold?
It's still evolving, to be honest with you. Like I'm still don't know what the meaning of life is, like why we're here, but I focus on like more of the intuitive feelings of like what makes me feel good, what makes me feel present, what makes me feel joyful, what makes me feel expansive, what makes me feel the feelings of love, because intuitively that feels good, that feels right. And, at times, I feel connected to all things. I feel like maybe I am, and not in any sort of
I know what you're going to say.
conceited type
Just
way,
say it.
but
Just
like
say it.
maybe
Go
I
ahead.
am God. I am
Right.
God. But we all are God. Like I'm not any more God than you're God when I say I'm God. I'm saying maybe we're having this experience where, you want to experience all these different things. So you have to sort of split yourself into these million, billion different experiences, or trillion when you look at everything in the universe. So you have a single point of consciousness to observe it from. And then after we come back to the source and we die. And if that was it, I have to forget, everything before that. I also want to have a true experience in this lifetime. If I remembered that I was God and anything could end in a second, or it didn't really matter, this experience, right? So if you think about it from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense. So I try to open my mind to all different perspectives of what's going on here, and try not to get so caught up into like, oh my God, this is happening to me, poor little me, or whatever. Um, but it's definitely an ongoing search for the true meaning of life. I don't know if I'll ever sort of put a finger on it, because the more you feel like you get closer to an answer, I find the more different questions start popping up, or different experiences start popping up, or different insights sort of come to you. um and then you look at some of the Buddhist philosophy. It's like trying to remove all thought altogether, like full detachment. So it's interesting. I'm reading a book right now, the Three Pillars of Zen, and it's not an easy read for me, because some of these thought processes are kind of like very different. But I'm enjoying trying to sort of understand it, trying to sort of be malleable with the way I view this reality, to understand that there are thousands of perspectives, and you can't judge anyone for the perspective they have, because that's just how they view reality through their lens.
Yeah.
Um,
And you kind of have to
so yeah,
meet
so
you have to meet people where they are, right? You have to allow them to show up who they are, what they are. And to your point, you can't judge them for that, because, that's just how they're operating. That's their capacity, that's their bandwidth. And, it could be a duty to bring them to a more awareness, but to force them into a space of that awareness is doing them a disservice, because you do need to go through those trials and tribulations and those experiences and those, you want to call them awakenings, whatever you want to call them. You do have to experience those in order to kind of get to that next landing, then climb another staircase and get to that next landing.
well, that's exactly it. The experiential aspects of all of these things that the great teachers, all the books talk about, you'll never understand it until you experience it. And before I was sort of going down my path, I would meet a lot of interesting people who definitely were exploring spirituality and consciousness much longer than I was. And I wasn't ready. I didn't understand what they were talking about. It was like, yeah, cool, that's interesting conversation, but I had no understanding until I started walking down that path myself, and then having some of the experiences you read about, whether through meditation or through psychedelics. And then you have this different understanding where it's like, oh my God, and before I got into all this stuff, I started by reading these texts. I started by reading the Bhagavad Gita. I started by reading, the Book of the Dead. I started by reading all of these different, even the Bible, and just trying to understand, like, okay, like, is there some coded, messages in here that I'm missing, or like, I'm trying to figure out. But a lot of the things would resonate, but there was a different level of understanding than you would get with experience. And then when I experienced it, I was like, oh, I got it now. Okay, like that makes sense. This sense of unity or oneness, or clearing your mind to that absolute space of like just meditation, um, or these crazy ayahuasca type experiences where you break through, or 5-MeO DMT, where you go to this totally different place that's beyond space and time, and you come back and you're just like, whoa, I'm alive. What was that? I feel different. Like I have a different perspective on everything now.
Yeah.
Flowers look different. The air
Yeah.
smells different,
Yeah.
But you could have told me about it all you wanted, and I would have said, yeah, that sounds cool. But then all of a sudden, you experience it, and you're like, okay, now I get something a lot different.
Yeah, there's no relationship with it. It's just words, right? There's no feeling attached to it, and a lot of those experiences I've had, my probably most profound experiences have been in sensory deprivation tanks, where John C. Lilly talks about the absolute zero point, when you get to that point of pure consciousness, and even then there's another layer to peel back, right? And I've experienced that. It felt like the only way I can explain it is like it was abundance, and it was a void completely met together. and it felt like I was flying through the cosmos, right? But people who haven't experienced that or felt, or at least felt that, whether it be an ayahuasca or psilocybin or even just some edible cannabis, whatever it is, you can, unless you can get to that level state of introspection, but also nothingness, right? It's a hard thing to relate to unless you actually experientially have felt it, because it is a feeling. Like, back to the point of your facility, is like, there, yeah, maybe on paper it doesn't make sense, but experientially and feeling guiding, right? It does, and it works.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there's this really interesting book that I read called The Surrender Experiment. Have you read that book, Surrender
I have
Experiment,
not.
Michael Singer?
I have not.
So I recommend this book to everyone. It's one of the few books that I can recommend to almost anyone. That The Way to Love is also another book that I recommend to everyone by Anthony DeMello. But The Surrender Experiment, it's a true story, a guy's life story, Michael Singer. He also wrote The Untethered Soul. You might have heard that one. It's a popular
Yes.
one.
Yep.
And it just is about letting go to life and not trying to sort of control the outcomes of any experiences. So, and saying that, most of the time, life is happening for you. And if you could just get beyond your own mind and to allow things to sort of change, then other things are going to unfold. And for me, that's rung true so much, where, you know, your best staff quits one day, or what you think is your best staff quits one day. You think it's the end of the world. Now I got to hire someone, I got to retrain them, I got to find someone I trust, blah, blah, blah. But that's going to this negative lack mindset. Whereas, the same mindset, you have the same probability of, hey, I might attract an employee or a manager or whatever that's going to take this business to the whole level, give me more free time, allow me to do the things that I want to do more than these day-to-day things. There's an equal amount of possibility that it can go either way. But if I was just so caught up on that fear, anger, worry, I would have blocked myself from allowing the secondary nature to happen. Maybe I would try to convince them to come back, or pay them more for doing the same job when they really don't want to be there. And so the more you just let go to that, and you create room and space for new things to come into your life, for change to happen, and allow yourself to flow with that change, and not try to judge it at the moment that it happens. Say, okay, like, something better can be just around the corner, or something different. This is part of the changing process. And I tell people that I coach too, like, when we're manifesting, we're focusing on this feeling or this type of life we want to live and embody every day. It's really good to visualize and feel that feeling of what that feels like to you. Whatever that is, freedom, abundance, you can put a lot of words to it and you can feel into it. But from where you are now to when you get there, there's probably a lot of changes that have to happen. And some of those changes may seem like you're going backward. Like, maybe you're going to lose your job. Maybe, your relationship ends. Maybe, who knows? Maybe you get sick, because there's all these things that happen that shift your perspective, that change your life, that change course completely. Maybe coronavirus is to come and change the whole world. And in the moment that it's happening, you can't see the way out. But what happens is it awakens humanity to sort of start thinking for themselves, to maybe communicating better. Maybe this is what, we're at this epitome of a divide in every single area of life. And maybe it's now at this point we have to start, coming back together. Maybe not, but, trying to control it and trying to figure out what the outcome, being good or bad, is sort of counterintuitive to this sort of way of thinking. It's like, okay, these things need to happen. So allow them to sort of unfold. It doesn't mean don't do nothing. It means just to be actively aware and look for opportunities in these sort of in this chaos or these challenges.
But we're not taught that, from a young age. We're not taught that in school. We're not taught that in life, right? We are graded, we are judged. It is good or bad. There isn't this yin and yang energetic balance that we're taught as youth. And maybe we enter the world with that, authentically, right? Like, my daughter's 6, and I could see that onion peeling back, and I could see things changing for her. But and my son's 2. But you could say that they identity and ego start to develop, and that's where we do start to put things as good or bad, and that's when we do start to divide rather than bring things together. And it does take the human experience, and wherever you kind of come to this realization or actualization of this reality, it takes all of those experiences to get you there, so you can kind of unlearn everything that you've egoically learned.
And I think it's designed like that on purpose, designed to be challenged, designed to fail, designed to get hurt, to have trauma, because it brings you back to this full circle when you find that healing, or you come back and you learn again to sort of shift into something different. You know, like I think we choose our entry points into this world based on what we need to learn in this lifetime as a spiritual being or as a soul or as consciousness, whatever word you want to put towards it. But all these experiences are designed perfectly for us. And that split that happens when we're usually between 0 to 8, or these patterns that sort of come that, you know, at the time are sort of helping to keep us safe or whatever. Like coming full circle is learning to work through that and seeing beyond and coming back to sort of wholeness or whatever you want to call it. Everyone's different. You know, some people might be traumatic childhood. Some people just might not get attention from their overworking parents. Some people might have something happen to them, right? But I think that's part of this challenge in life, is where you can sort of gain awareness and change that narrative and sort of continue to grow as a spiritual being.
And I think a big part of it is the being seen element of things. I'm reading How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Love that
and
book.
yeah, it's great. And a big part of it is, you know, whether it be in whatever field you're in, sales, coaching, whatever it is, ultimately people want to be seen and people want to be heard. And you know, we quickly jump to trying to fix, right? Especially as men, we try to jump to this fixed mindset where so much of it is just holding space, right? It's a cliche term, but holding space for someone to air their grievances and not trying to fix anything. And it goes back to your previous point of just allowing the ebbs and flows of life. Like I don't surf, but I admire surfers to the utmost. You're basically in outer space that's tangible, right? And like the patience and the poise and you know the body awareness that comes with surfing is just, you if you watch a surfer, they don't take every wave, you know, they wait and they go based off of really feeling. And so
Mhm.
much of it does derive from that essence of who and what we are, but we lose that culturally, and then we become unseen, you know, and we kind of put on these masks and these facades to be seen. And so much of that book is just about hearing people, holding space for people, and allowing people to be seen and show up for them to the best of your ability.
Yeah, that's bang on, I think, in many ways. And for different people, it's different things. And what I mean by that is like there's certain core wounds that people encounter in life. Some people obviously you don't encounter all of them. But there's these core wounds that happen when you're a child, like not being seen or heard. So then your whole life you're reaching out, you're maybe having behaviors to get attention, you're maybe doing these things in relationships, you know, where you want to be seen and heard because you're not getting fulfilled in those things that you sort of were lacking as a child. So now your whole life is trying to get that back until you realize that, hey, um, you know, getting acknowledged from this person doesn't really determine who I am specifically. You know, when you can see and acknowledge yourself and realize that you have everything within you that you already need. um, so it's interesting, you know, and that's a big one for many people, being seen and heard. Like I am safe is another big one. People that feel unsafe as a child, you know, maybe they become workaholics because they identify like having money as having the safety net. So they're just going to work even when they have millions of dollars, you know, just like they have this program that's a core wound in them that, you know, maybe they grew up in poverty and they said, I'm never going to be poor again because that puts me in these unsafe situations. And now I'm just going to work my ass off forever and ever and ever until, you know, I own the world type thing.
Right.
Um, so, so,
But
so yeah,
for me, it's about like matrixing your emotions and reverse engineering those things when they come up in that moment. And a big part of it is being able to respond to life rather than react to life, right? Because we are reactionary instinctual beings, right, for good reason, but we have the capacity to move past that and to respond to life. And for me, that was like a big line of demarcation when I was able to recognize like it's like a superpower. Like time stands still and slows down when you're able to create a difference between the trigger and your reaction or response to it. And so much of that has come from just being sitting in stillness and sitting in that quiet space and having open, honest, radical conversations with myself.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree 100%.
What's your relationship with breath work? Because I had a breath work facilitator here, and he did a ceremony with me and two other guys, and it was psychedelic. Like it was like I was literally like I felt like I was going through an exorcism. Like if you would have been on the outside not knowing what was going on, you would say I went through an exorcism, and it was powerful. It's amazing how that can change.
Yeah, breath work is my thing. It's one of the things that I've really sort of adapted as a personal practice and also teach. And we started doing also even a training to teach other facilitators, people that wanted to then become breathwork facilitators. And it started, back in 2015 when I had a podcast, my first podcast, and I was working with a website. I reached out to Wim Hof at the time. He wasn't really super popular yet, but he's an interesting guy. And I was like, I'd love to interview this guy. I connected with their team. We set up an interview. He invited me to get trained. I wanted to climb a mountain in my shorts because the ego's like, that'd be cool. I can make some cool social media. Like, look at me, I'm cool, climbing mountains. And I got there, and in the advanced training in Colorado, and I just started listening to story after story of people whose life was transformed through breath work, whether it was addiction, whether it was disease, whether it was mental um, wellness, depression, anxiety, all kinds of things. Like, wow, this thing is really, really powerful. Like, it made me feel good. Maybe I was already in a pretty good space, but it sort of changed my perspective on the potential it had to sort of help people. And when I got back from that and I was certified, I started doing like Wim Hof training, and then I started really curating my own experiences. We did one experience there that Wim just took us on this like hour long intense breathing um, kind of experience. And at one point I sort of left my body, and I came back and I was just crying, like this cathartic. I hadn't cried who knows how many years, and it just felt so good to let out these emotions that I guess were sort of buried deep within myself. And I didn't really understand what was happening at the time, but I just knew it felt good, and I was just very sort of curious to explore that more. And as I got back, I started studying other types of breathwork modalities, whether it's transformational, holotropic, and I started really just crafting my own experience and just experimenting on myself and some of my close friends, using some movement, using some music and some guided meditation, and created what's now elemental rhythm. It's our own type of breath work. We now have about 30 certified instructors, and I tried to take the things that I really liked from different ones and sort of compact into an experience. And it's mind blowing, like what it can do for people, both for the facilitators and for the receivers. I've seen people that have come and you know anxiety, depression, heart rate variabilities change, resting heart rate, blood pressure going down over time. Because the breath work, I think, allows you to sort of one start breathing properly, but also two, releasing these emotions that are stored deep within the body. Trauma that's in the nervous system, it allows you this sort of way to let it go. Animals in the wild have all these sort of built-in responses to stress, whether it's shaking, whether it's going through these sort of like twitches or doing different things, where humans, we just clench up, we hold on. Something happens to us, we like store it in our body. And I think movement and breath work can help to release that. And then we have a little bit of guided meditation that we use to help guide people into these spaces. So it's been an amazing sort of journey for me in that regard. And we're launching a new website probably within the next month or two called elementalrhythm.com, where we have courses not only on for these experiential, which we call elemental mind work experiences, but also for the fundamentals. Because a lot of people don't breathe properly. A lot of people overbreathe. A lot of people breathe up high in their chest. A lot of people breathe through their mouth. A lot of people breathe too quickly. And so we want to teach people that just by changing some of the fundamentals, you can have very profound changes in your everyday life. The way you feel, the way you think, the way you sort of perform, all of these different things. And it's all connected to breath, something very simple. And all of the ancient practices, going back to religion, all talk about breath. So there are some keys in there that I guess I have picked up and sort of brought my awareness and attention to,
There
hey,
you go.
there's something here. And that's what resonated a lot. Like the breath of life, it was breathed into man. Every tradition talks about breath and how important it is.
Yeah, my experience with breath work, like I said, it was almost like I was going through an exorcism. But I also noticed a buddy of mine's a physical trainer, and we were doing some training, and he was saying, all right, only breathe nasally, only breathe through your nose. That's it. And the body and the mind's connection just becomes way more in tune when you're working out. And it's hard. It's hard to count and breathe and focus and have all these different experiences going on at once. But once you're able to kind of tap into that space of breathing through your nose, and it becomes just autonomous, it just becomes this automatic system that's in place. You do start to become more mindful of it, but you also, there's a letting go, and there isn't that aware, like you don't get into that, oh, your body's not keeping a faster pace car. It's just at a slower rate, but you're able to kind of get into the mind a little bit more. What kind of breath work are you bringing? Like, is it more like an hour long session of heavy breathing, or is it through your nasal? What kind of breath work are you kind of
Yeah,
facilitating?
so elemental rhythm is, it's about an hour long experience, which is about 30 minutes of intense breathing. Okay, so we have rounds and we call it elemental rhythm because it follows the rhythm of the music. So some of the other breathing practices, I felt it wasn't really guiding me to follow anything specific, and I find myself getting lost, and I find other people getting lost. So we set the tempo of the music around 90 beats per minute, which allows to follow the bass rhythm of each song. So we start with slow and deep breathing. So we just really want to open up the breathing in the airway and just getting to the diaphragm. And then each round or each certain segment of time, it picks up a little bit faster, brings up to sort of this peak. Then we do a breath hold, we release, relax, and we go into another round. And we'll have about 5 rounds like this. We're building up, holding, letting go, and coming back. And the whole process of the 5 or 6 rounds, about 30 minutes, is to just bring you to this altered state with all this breathing. And that's where we find like the mind, sort of the brain sort of changes in the way the blood flows to the brain, and some of our defense mechanisms come down a little bit. And then the guided meditation, which is very just introspective, we just get people to focus on gratitude, focus on themselves, and saying some mantras to themselves, and it creates this incredibly transformative experience in that state. So we've created this process just based on things that were working for me, and I just over the years kept A/B testing. I'm into
Sure.
like internet marketing and stuff like that. So okay, I'm gonna try this, gonna try that, see what the feedback is. And we always start with 5 minutes of movement and shaking as well, because I found like the shaking is a medicine in itself. And again, like when you have these traumas stored in the body, animals in the wild, they shake it off. Humans, we hold on. So really want to get the body moving the first 5 minutes. I did some Osho meditations, active meditations in the past, and really love the movement and shaking aspect of it to get to this sort of cathartic release. So we add that in the beginning for about 5 minutes, and we just bring people on a journey. I just tell them like, look at this as an experience. The more you put in, the more you let go, the more you push yourself a little bit past your comfort zone, the more probability or higher chance there is for a breakthrough experience. And sometimes, everyone has a breakthrough. Sometimes a few people do, but we've sort of A/B tested to the point that we've got the highest conversion rate possible, I think, at this point.
You've
Yeah.
maxed out your conversion rate. You fine tuned it.
For
But
now,
yeah,
we're in a good spot. Yeah.
yeah. You hit a landing. That's great, man. That's great. I want to ask you. You kind of touched upon it a little bit. What's actually happening on the on the charts when we're doing breath work, or when you're in a ceremony of breath work? What's actually happening? You mentioned a little bit with the brainwave state. What's transpiring on a physical level? Because for some people, if you don't want to step into the woo woo element of things, right? I'm very comfortable in the woo woo. I love the woo woo. Let's go. Let's go down that rabbit hole. But for some people, there's a lot of fear based in the woo woo. So it needs to be an Excel
Yeah.
spreadsheet that makes sense. So what's happening to your body physically that is actually tangibly a difference?
Okay. So again, breath work is a blanket term, and it covers everything from pranayama to different types of breathing techniques. So, and every type of breathing technique does something a little bit different. So when you inhale in, on an inhale, it increases heart rate and blood pressure. When you exhale, it slows it down. So by increasing the pace of your breathing, it's going to increase your heart rate. It's going to get things flowing more. When you're exhaling carbon dioxide, it's going to change the pH level in your blood as well. So what happens is, it's a little bit more scientific, but something called the Bohr effect, that what happens is carbon dioxide is not a waste gas. It's actually really important, because what it does, it delivers oxygen molecules from the hemoglobin, the red blood cells, into your tissues. So when you're hyperventilating, you're breathing a lot, but what happens is your body's holding on to the oxygen molecules. So the blood is going to get a little more alkaline. So that's going to also, your veins are going to vasoconstrict a little bit. So you can feel that tightness in your hands, and it's actually going to reduce blood flow, I think, blood flow to the organs and brain, because you're vasoconstricting. So I think the reduced blood flow in the brain is what's bringing people into these like states of like, I wouldn't say a near death experience, but like the body's sort of like, oh, what's going on here? Like this is different. And it's just releasing these chemicals, these neurochemicals that are creating these responses in the body, euphoric responses, like almost like having a near death experience. So that's probably the best way to explain what is physically happening. But even with the vasoconstriction, you would think that by breathing more, it would make your hands tighten up even more. But I've seen people breathe through it and their hands totally release. So um, is it actually like a scientific sort of thing, or is it an energetic thing? Like, I don't know. I don't think I don't think anyone really knows. So you can say like, yeah, this is happening, but what's creating this sort of experience? Is it bring you to like a sort of a near death simulation? I've seen people pass out in like these low oxygen states where, they're doing like the Wim Hof breath hold. So they're breathing, they're expelling all this CO2, because carbon dioxide is what actually triggers you to breathe. It's not the lack of oxygen, it's the increased amount of carbon dioxide. So when you're exhaling carbon dioxide, your carbon dioxide level starts so low. So when you exhale and hold, it takes so much longer for it to get to the point where it's going to trigger you to breathe. But then your brain's going to be lacking oxygen for all that time. So that's why sometimes people pass out and you go into this automatic breathing when you pass out to come back online. But there's something interesting that happens in that state with these low oxygen states. Like they say, it stimulates stem cells, or it recreates different, capillaries in the brain, because it's trying to sort of adapt. It's like, oh, if there's not enough oxygen here again, like how are we going to sort of combat that? Making some more like capillaries, and so for more blood flow. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that are going on that science is just really starting to sort of track right now, or sort of learn about right now, as more and more people are interested in it. But strictly on the experiential side, I think that's what's happening. I think you're overbreathing, the pH in your body is changing, your brain, the blood flow to your brain is changing to different areas, your defense mechanisms are going down because of that, like the conscious mind. So it's allowing you to go a little bit deeper into the subconscious mind, and it's allowing what's under there sort of just to come up to the surface. So if some people call a ceremony, it might feel a little woo-woo, or we're gonna, tap into your spirit guides, or blah blah blah. I just tell people, listen, don't judge it, don't put a label on it. Just follow the instructions the best you can, see what comes up for you. And then you can decide. You can decide what it is for yourself. It doesn't have to be anything. It could just be a cathartic release where you just cry for 30 minutes and it feels good. So let's not put a label on it. That's exactly what it was for you. Do you feel better? Most likely yes. And most people, their mind calms down. I think all that breathing just moves a lot of energy through their body and allows their mind to calm down after.
Yeah.
So a lot of things are happening for sure. And there's a lot of different people explain it in a little bit different ways. The science is pretty sort of concrete, but what is actually happening and how people explain that, I've seen many different interesting explanations. And that's just my best way of explaining it. I don't know if that made sense,
I think you nailed it.
Woo or not woo for you.
Well, it teeters on it, right? Because my experience, my left leg, I believe it was like I was pedaling a bicycle, right? Like it just started doing to the beat of the music, and then at another point, my hands just like kind of started contorting and getting tight. So like there's this physical element that's happening, right? But and that's like measurable, right? And we could put that on paper. But when you reverse engineer that in as micro as you can get with it, there's still an energetic experience that's happening that you may not be able to put on a chart, or you may not be able to measure. And that in lies where I believe the change happens. That's where your experience goes goes back to the point of that feeling, and you go, okay, this is, to what you're saying, maybe this is the God self expressing itself. Maybe this is an experience that is God, that is next level of consciousness. And it's important to me to tap into those experiences, whatever they may be: float tanks, breath work, psilocybin, ayahuasca, whatever it is, because those are, peeling back the tangibles, and you're able to kind of tap into what's going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
How has sound, I know you guys do sound healing, how has that kind of taken form?
Yeah, again, like all these modalities, I think they
There's so
resonate
many.
with different people differently. There's so many, there's something really interesting about sound and frequency and the vibration of sound. And, there's, again, like a lot of these things, they're starting to get more awareness around them, where I think, the typical Western models, like, hey, if we can't make money from this, we're not interested type thing. Like, unless we can get, a way to find a model to use these. So it's more like grassroots. And I think even like a lot of ancient texts as well talk about vibration. They talk about sound, and you hear these interesting sort of stories about these like magical horns that can move objects with the vibration. There's different scientists over the years that have been sort of considered like total quacks that would have these devices that use vibration to kill pathogens and bacteria. Which some people swear by till this day. I think there is something there, that using sound as a vibration to heal is an amazing modality. It can shift the way you feel. Just look at listening to different music, how it changes the way you feel, right? It just changes your energy. And a lot of, the modern music, it's not really done with any intention to sort of do that, other than to sort of make you feel specifically how they're feeling that song, to resonate with them. And I know, like even in psychedelic experiences, when you hear music and you hear, especially in singing with a voice, you connect with it in such a different way, and that's what got me singing recently in the last few years, because I used to play music and I heard someone in a ceremony, an ayahuasca ceremony, singing, and then in my mind's like, oh, I wish I could sing like that. And the experience, like, you can't just sing about something that is meaningful to you. And so then I started trying to sing where I want to connect with people rather than trying for people to think I was a good singer. It was a big shift. It's like, hey, I'm not singing for attention. I'm singing to connect with people.
Right.
And when I did that, it just shifted the whole thing. I was able to connect with people on a deeper level because I was just wanting to share a feeling or a vibration. So we use sound bowls, we use different chimes and stuff like that. I'm not an expert personally in sound healing. There's some really amazing people out there that do use it. Some of the claims are kind of woo-woo just because there's not a lot of science, but I've seen some really interesting things about, how different sounds can change the vibration of water, and water holds frequency and stuff like that. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on out there, and I totally believe in it.
Yeah, I mean, the old water holds energy and has memory, and whether you want to talk about a Disney movie that's telling that story, or if you want to talk about actual experiences. But it's amazing how once you open up to that space, for me, again, the sensory deprivation tank probably being my most go-to modality, is that, like, when I leave there, it feels like every song is talking to me. It feels like every song is like relatable, and it's just speaking my soul, because I'm open, right? I'm open. You want to say portals, whatever you want to say. I'm open, and now I'm receiving the music in this different vibrational pattern, and it's hitting home in a different way. And it could be the same song I listened to thousands of times, but when I leave,
Right.
and I leave the experience of sensory deprivation, I feel more in tuned, or maybe more authentic, and now the music is hitting home in a little bit different way. And it would make sense that music can, because, like, again, to your point, like, you listen to different songs to bring up different feelings, different emotions, whether it be, you listen to Slipknot and you're angry, or you're listening to, Miles Davis and you're flowing and it's jazz, and there's just so many different expressions of the self that come through with music. And it would make sense that something that, like, sound bowl healing, how it's so kind of pure, right? It doesn't have too much going on. The purity of it would have an essence that resonates over time and with everybody.
Yeah, and I've heard like some firsthand accounts of people like having a crystal sound bowl experience, going into a completely like psychedelic state, or having these breakthroughs or these cathartic releases where the vibration just does something and just allows them to go somewhere. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting sort of area, and I think a lot more um, science is going to start going that way with different vibrations, whether it's audible, whether it's not, whether it's just using like there's like these different frequency devices like PEMF now they're using, which in a way, like that kind of vibration and pulsing, although we can't hear it as sound therapy, it's using similar principles where it's creating a vibration that goes deep into your body or different frequencies. So I think it's all interesting. I believe that, again, there's a lot of potential. And I love being a guinea pig for this stuff. I'll try anything. So I went to this place called the Sound Dome. It was, where was it? It was in Joshua Tree. They had this like crazy dome where it was built for like sound, and they had all these bowls in it. It was a really cool experience. Now, did it heal me? I don't know, but I left there feeling like amazing, like just like vibing out, like the whole vibration just changes the way you feel. So even if it's just for that, for helping people to relax and put them in a state of just calm and relax, that's healing. When your nervous system relaxes, it allows you to sort of regenerate and heal at a different level. So
Right.
anything that can do that, I'm a fan of.
Yeah,
Floating,
you could pull from a different place, right? You're pulling
yeah.
from a different kind of part of you that you may have not been able to in the past, right? It's a new experience that you can now tap into. Again, not a big fan of that term, but you can now use as a foundation for other experiences, and then you're able to kind of lean into that the next time it comes around. What's your experience with light therapy?
Yeah, so again, like there's a broad spectrum, right? There's
Yeah.
red light therapy, there's like those vitamin D type lights, there's infrared, um, there's things like the Lucia light, like with that flashes. I've tried a
Yeah,
few of
I want to
those.
dive into. Have you experienced that before?
Yeah. So we have one at our center that comes once a month. They're going to be coming a little more frequently now if we get to open up ever, with the state of the world right now. But it's a pretty incredible experience where it simulates a psychedelic-ish experience where the more you sort of let go, the deeper you go into it, and there's different levels where your eyes are closed, you're seeing all these colors and different depths, and you sort of lose yourself in it. And there's music playing. They have some claims as to what it does, how it affects the pineal gland, and what it's doing to your brain, which I still think needs a lot more scientific studies to sort of back it up. There's another Angelite. I actually interviewed him on my podcast. The founder of it, interesting guy, comes from Silicon Valley and created this light that he was sort of intuitively told to build and creates these experiences. So I think there's something there. The experiences are very unique and you feel really different when you come out of it. Um, as far as the claims, yeah, there's anecdotal evidence of it helping people on their journey, and different changes coming about, but at the same time, like the placebo effect, where you give something to someone, you tell them it's going to help them change, and they believe it because they have an experience, also goes a long way as well. And even modern science is having trouble sort of keeping up with the placebo effect, whereas people are taking a sugar pill and they're getting better because they believe it's making them better. um, so yeah, I love the light experiences. I'm
I haven't
still not
experienced it yet.
100%.
There's
Okay,
one that
well,
comes to my local float center, and the woman who
okay.
facilitates it, she leans more into the therapy aspect of it. But there is, from speaking to people, there is a psychedelic experience attached to it. Now, I just saw the other day that they came out with an app that you could stare at your phone with the light, and there's music that you could tune up with it. So it is happening, right, and it is being brought to the awareness of the mainstream, where this experience, whatever you want to label it, is real, right? And what you take away from that experience may vary, but there is something there, and I'm dying to try it. Again, with the state of the world right now, it's been shut down, but hoping to get around to doing that relatively soon.
Yeah, it's a very cool experience. I would recommend it. Non-invasive, there's not really any side effects like a lot of psychedelics, as far as like you're gonna throw up or purge, or like you turn the light off and the experience is pretty much done. So I think it's a good sort of intro for people who are curious about this kind of stuff, but not ready to have a full experience yet, for
Yeah.
sure.
It seems interesting because, again, with the visual aspect of things and taking in, you know, the light that isn't there but is there, and it's on a different frequency and it's on a different plane that maybe we could even perceive, and being able to filter that and take that in, and then integrating that into our everyday life, and realizing that, kind of what you got from the ayahuasca ceremony was like, there's a version of reality that's outside of your touch that you can't see or feel. Well, you could feel it, you can't touch it or see it, but there's something else here. And all of these modalities, whether it be sound healing or sensory deprivation or light therapy, breath work, they're all an expression of that reality, and there's an expression of that
Hmm.
field that we can't always tap into.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So,
What are you currently working on, other than
what
other than the breath work? Because you seem like a very busy human being.
yeah, so I'm launching the breathwork site in the next few weeks. So that we're putting a lot of time and energy into. I also have I'm a partner in the personaldevelopmentschool.com, which is my partner Thais Gibson. She's amazing human being, really works on reprogramming the subconscious mind. We have about 40 courses that help people with all different aspects of their life, but really create long lasting change through understanding how the mind works, and creating some sort of um, ways to integrate it into your life. A lot of the learning is like theoretical in that space, where she gives some really amazing tools, and the school's growing like crazy. That respect. So those are the two main things I'm working on. There's a couple other projects I'm in the startup phase right now that I'm looking at maybe getting into around, like, psychedelics, because a lot of companies are going public right now with that. Maybe a retreat center up in Ontario, because I might not be able to travel for a while. Who knows? But just keep my eyes open, going to flow, not really rushing in to make any decisions. The studio we still have in Toronto, which is the home base for me. Yeah, I'm just trying to like navigate what's going on right now, not getting too caught up in like this doom and gloom scenario in my mind. I'm just gonna keep working on everything that's important to me and show up the best way that I can. So elementalrhythm.com, I'd say, is where most of my energy is going right now, and personaldevelopmentschool.com, because we can reach a lot of people that way. And then hopefully in the near future, like live retreats, maybe in Costa Rica or up here in Ontario.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard to navigate these waters of the 3D experience in life and what we're experiencing in this reality, right? It's hard to have, interpersonal relationships and then work and then life, and how do we navigate through all of those different experiences and try to find a cohesive string that lies within all of it. And it's the story of the alchemist. It's invoking out of you what you know about yourself already, but getting past all the everything you've learned and all the masks and all the ego and all the facades and all the bullshit that's kind of compounded over years, and this built up muck inside of you. When I meditate, if I'm doing chakra cleansing or whatever you want to call it, I always just picture like just scraping out the inside of myself, and just like every time I breathe, I'm just kind of like cleaning a glass window with Windex, just like getting all the shit out. And it's so important to have people like you in spaces that you're creating, because so many people don't want to step into the woo woo, but there's this calling or this draw to it.
Yeah, and I think that's why I resonate with a lot of people that are both in the business world or both, in these other sort of areas that don't like the woo so much. I came from there, I came from business, I came from, went to school and more of an analytical mindset. But I think there is a bridge between it. I think, like people, like again, meet them where they're at, but just let them know that, there is other things out there than what they currently do, but they don't have to sort of go all the way to becoming a hippie or going to an ashram in India and stuff like that to experience some of that. Let's experience what you feel called to. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast, you're talking to me is, maybe you want to try a float, maybe you want to do something like this. And they have their own experience and they're like, oh shit, what was that? But yeah. So I try to just be open with everyone. I try to let everyone know that, I'm meeting them where they're at, and wherever they're at is perfectly fine for me. And I think we're at a time of great change. And I think what I'm seeing a lot after this is like people are looking for more, because they got this break in their life where all this shit happened, and then they question like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like they're really starting to ask that question. So having places like Elemental or podcasts like this or community spaces where people can get together and start just exploring what it really means to be a human being, and what's reality is beyond their 9 to 5 job and taxes and all this kind of stuff that is consuming most of their mental energy and emotional energy.
Yeah, it's bandwidth capacity, right? We're spread so thin in all these other, want to say force fed, or all these other social norms and expectations, that we have received this moment of clarity, if you will, or this opportunity to find clarity. And now, what do I do with it? Right? It's awareness, it's accountability, it's discipline, and we all kind of have moments of awareness that kind of either come knocking on the door or 2x4 to the back of the head, but it's going to find its way to express itself. And it's fear based to not step into that, and that's okay. But there's so much on the other side of it. It's like you said, like through all that darkness or all that fear, there is something on the other end of that. And if people can have that glimmer of hope with that, and just kind of keep on keeping on to the best of their ability and not lean into the fear as much, maybe we'd have a healthier culture and a healthier mindset.
And I hope that's one of the outcomes of this, that people decide to put some more work in on themselves, invest in themselves a little bit more, become healthier, become, less, I guess, meditate more, slow down a little bit and see how they can sort of help the planet, help each other. And the best way is, again, starting with yourself. You change your vibration, it affects all the people around you, which, like when I started on this journey, a lot of my friends thought I was totally nuts. I just stuck with it and didn't, whatever. Like I was just like being me. And now, like 5, 10 years later, they're coming around. It's like, hey, I'm anxious, I'm anxiety, I'm stressed. Can you help me? What do I do? I'm like, yeah, just try this or try that, see what resonates with you. And they're coming along. And that's just for me doing my thing. I could see the effect it's having on my community, and I encourage everyone, just don't worry about everyone else, just focus on you. Take this time to sort of see what's important in your life, and just spend more time doing the things you love, and make yourself healthier, stronger, more resilient human being. And that's what's most important, because by doing that, by showing up for yourself, you can show up for everyone else better if you want to, or keep showing up for yourself.
Yeah. And
um,
it's funny you say that, because I remember going out for dinner with a couple of buddies of mine kind of early on my own personal journey, and having these conversations about sensory deprivation and my experiences in the tank. And, two of them were like, okay, and the other was like, okay, tell me more, I guess, and again, that could have been a moment where I said, oh man, like my closest friends think I'm crazy or think I'm this or think I'm that. Or I could just lean to like, all right, that's where they are, right? That's where they are on their journey. And all I can do is continue to show up the way I am and be authentic to myself. And it's to your point, like start with yourself. Just start with sitting in silence, which is, all of men's problems stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room by himself, right? If you could sit, and that's, for me, that's my go-to. It's just getting back to silence. If I can get back to silence, I will be able to navigate the world in a different perspective. But we get so caught up in the day-to-day, the mundane and all the bullshit that it starts to flood us and starts to consume us, and we get away from that silence. And I just had that experience about 2 weeks ago. So I know what's going on. I've stepped away from what I know works, right? And you're not able to default to those things if you don't at least step into that space and try.
Yeah, exactly. So find out what that space looks like to you, feels like to you, and step into it. Even if you just do 5-10 minutes a day of silence. That's what got me into meditating an hour a day, where I was like, I listened to a podcast, and Val Ravikant was saying, an hour of introspection every single day. So, okay, I'm going to try it for 60 days. 60 days now gone to over 100 days. And I'm like, okay, like this is what I'm doing now. This really helps me in all aspects of my life. So I'm going to stick with it. And it's just quieting my mind, because my mind is like, I got so much on the go. But this helps to give me some clarity, helps me to see what the priorities are, and helps me to be present. So super important.
And creating those micro habits, right? Like creating those micro habits. And, I hate the act as if, right? I hate the idea of like fake it till you make it, but just show up for yourself and show up in these expressions and step into that space to the best of your ability. And you'll be able to create new experiences. And from those experiences, you could apply that to other avenues of your life and kind of reverse engineer it to yourself and the essence of who you are.
Absolutely.
Gio, thank you so much, man. Where can people connect with you? I know we mentioned a little bit earlier, but where can people connect with you and find out?
Yeah, so Instagram, Elemental Gio, GiovanniBartolomeo.com. This is my personal site. ElementalRhythm.com is what's launching soon. You can sign up there and get like a intro offer to our breathwork platform. We're also doing facilitator training. If anyone feels called to become a breathwork facilitator, we can get you into it. You can try one of our sessions out, see if it's for you. Instagram is probably the best, and my YouTube channel. It's Elemental, or just Google my name on YouTube. I think it's Elemental Awakening on there as well. You can watch a documentary, a bunch of videos, and all kinds of stuff.
I appreciate it, man, and I really enjoy the work you're doing, because it hits home with me. You know what I mean? I'm watching it and I'm consuming it. I'm like, yeah, this guy, he's creating the space for his community and for people everywhere. And I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the chat.
And I also appreciate the opportunity just to be on your show and speak with your community, and also keep up the great work you're doing, brother, and keep shining that light and being a good example for your kids. And I apologize if you hear a dog barking in the background. Do you hear it?
I do. I love it. It's the confirmation of the conversation.
Yeah, so it's been crazy here the last little while with kids home from school, a new dog, and I apologize for that. But yeah, thank you again, and keep up the great work, brother.
Don't apologize. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Okay.